Yeah, because they know when um, they know when I'm pleased, they know when I'm disappointed, they know when it's time to buckle down. And if I tell them this is not our best, because we have that relationship, I don't have to come down heavy. They
Hmm.
understand that um, they can do better because I see the potential in them. I have their best interests at heart.
Hi, this is Liz Weaver, and you are listening to the Learning Success Podcast, an information packed podcast with the latest news, information, and tips to help you overcome a learning difficulty. For anyone suffering from a reading difficulty, writing difficulty, a math difficulty, a focus problem, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, or ADHD, this is the place for you. The Learning Success Podcast is brought to you by learningsuccesssystem.com.
Hello, and welcome to the Learning Success Podcast, where we learn to embrace your child's brilliance and unleash their full potential. I'm Phil Weaver, and today we have Emily Morrison. Emily is a teacher, a mother of three, and a writer from the great state of Maine. After an overwhelming outpouring of recognition and love from her former students, her peers, and her administrators, Emily realized that she had something important to give. A very important element of teaching that may be largely missing in today's schools. Emily writes about her unique approach to teaching on her blog and in her upcoming book, Teach Like You Love Them and Mean It. Emily's approach to teaching is rooted in her love for children because she loves and believes in them. They grow to believe in themselves and in the value of what she has to teach them. The connection she has made with students has become her strength as an educator. Emily says, so many teachers are knocking it out of the park in terms of the craft of teaching, but they feel disconnected from their students and vice versa. She believes the reason for this disconnect is in the way academia prepares teachers for the classroom. There's no heart in it, she says. Teachers are not trained in social and emotional intelligences or in how to implement social and emotional curriculums. She realized that her ability to love her students in physically, socially, and emotionally acceptable ways has enhanced her ability to teach them academically. Hello, Emily.
Hi,
Welcome to the podcast today.
thank you for having me.
Very good. So, interestingly, in our last podcast, I just talked to a teacher at a school as a private school, and one of the subject that came up was it's actually a private school for kids with learning differences, and one of the things that came up was how they instituted the first 2 weeks of it was just about connection. So and it really came across as how powerful that was. That was a Hill school in Fort Worth, Texas. So it's interesting and fantastic that we're on this subject, because that's what you're all about, is connection with your students, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the more underutilized tools that every educator has is actually that ability to form a connection and to have a relationship with your students.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so often we think that the relationship that we have with our students is purely teacher-student, and we forget the human aspect that, students are kids, teachers are human, we're adults, we have more going on than just teacher-student. So I think establishing that connection is just so key, especially at the beginning of your time with students.
I see. Okay, so what are the benefits of it? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but
Yeah.
but
From personal experience, I've been teaching for almost 2 decades, and beyond the hot coffee that my kids, my former students bring in, and the
uh-huh.
food, and the outpouring of support, when you connect with a student on a like fundamental level, who they are, what they like to do, who am I, what do I like to do, um, you establish a way to communicate that's authentic, and the more real I am with my students, the more real they are with me. So I just find that the learning that we do is more meaningful, more authentic to their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
And
just, it's for me, after teaching as long as I've been teaching, um, I don't know how not to connect. It's just,
uh-huh.
I'm a very empathetic, nurturing person. So it's also just kind of part of who I am.
I see. And how does that actually affect the way they learn?
Yeah. I used to think that there was this old saying, my dad is also a teacher, he used to say, you can always, how did it go? You can never tighten, but you can always lighten. And I used to think, what does that mean? You can never tighten, but always lighten. You'd start with that serious face. And every time that someone would, step outside the box or break a rule, come down hard on them. You got to be the heavy. But that just wasn't me. That approach wasn't really working. So I found that just allowing myself to be who I am with my students kind of gave everybody a little breathing room. We relaxed, and we're actually able to focus better on what I was trying to teach them. Kids could focus easier. I could focus easier. We get more done. I don't want to brag, but we get more done in this classroom than in most classrooms that I visit, because there's an ease between myself and my students, and it really does help us.
Gotcha. Okay, so that saying is actually kind of hit home. So you can, I'm guessing, maybe if you come in very empathetic
Yeah.
and very, very connected, then when you do tighten,
Right.
you have a better effect.
Yeah, because they know when um, I'm pleased. They know when I'm disappointed. They know when it's time to buckle down. And if I tell them this is not our best, because we have that relationship, I don't have to come down heavy. They understand that they can do better because I see the potential in them. I have their best interests at heart. Kids are not as motivated as we think by punishment and reward. Kids are actually more motivated by connection, and a lot of current research in education supports that. They're motivated by relating to adults. They're not motivated by adults who take their cell phones away, or adults who say, okay, you're going to have to stay after school for detention. Because a lot of the kids that I work with, all they have faced in their life is adversity. That's all they know. So me giving them more of that doesn't necessarily motivate them to do better.
They already know how to tune that out.
Yeah, they've already blocked that out.
Right, right. So I would imagine if you've established a pretty strong connection, then within a big part of their motivation would be to please you, right?
Yeah, because when you know, again, that someone sees you for what you're good at, for someone sees you for your potential, and then they can also be honest enough with you to say when you're not meeting it, that's real to them.
Because you see them, I see.
Because I see them, because I hear them, and they see me and they hear me. And I think that's the foundation for good teaching. That's the foundation for a good teacher-student relationship.
Right. It seems to me that not only would that be a good foundation for academics, but also for personal growth for them. Is that?
Yeah. Having that growth mindset, not just with students, but with your colleagues, with their parents. If you want someone to grow as a person, as a student, then you need to communicate. You need to be able to understand each other. You need to collaborate. These are just good things to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would imagine, do people think that there's a conflict, or is there a conflict in being so, I'm going to this empathetic. You're already nodding before I ask the question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go for it then.
Well, so the myth I think about educators, especially empathetic educators, is that you must have no boundaries. You must tell them everything. You hug them, you give them rides home, you feed them. Like, where are your boundaries? And that is probably one of the bigger myths that I want to deconstruct, is that empathetic educators do have boundaries. It's actually the opposite. We have very clear expectations. We walk the walk, we talk the talk, we mean what we say. That isn't because we hop over boundaries or we, break down our children's boundaries. It's because we model for them the behavior that's acceptable. We model for them the language that's acceptable, the work ethic that we want. It's about being consistent. It isn't about picking which rules to break and which rules to follow. So I think that the longer I teach, certainly in one spot, the easier it is for me to prove that that's just not true. I do have boundaries with my students, but I also want them to know that I'll do anything within my power to help them academically, socially, emotionally, be successful.
Mhm. Yeah. So I imagine the boundaries are the kind of most of the answer to this, but are there any other ways that having that tight relationship with your student can get in the way of teaching?
Yeah, I mean, with anything, you have to navigate. I think that's probably one of the harder things about being a teacher is navigating those personal, professional boundaries. But um, sometimes kids, they see you as friend, parent, mentor, priest, cop, therapist. And for me as a teacher, it's just really important that I utilize every other adult in my school. That if someone is having personal issues or emotional issues, I can listen to them, but I also need to know who to direct them to. Because there are times when students' problems are beyond
Hmm.
my scope. And so talking to the social worker or to another teacher or to the administrators who I know need to be in the know, using the people that I am connected to help students when there are other issues that they bring to me, it's really important because that's going to come up.
Yeah,
It's just part of teaching.
sure, sure. So you mentioned they see you in different roles. Do you ever
Yeah.
jump between relationships with the same person?
Yeah, sometimes, you're the good cop and the bad cop.
Uh-huh.
You're the person that tells them, "Oh, this is great." And then, really? You made that choice. That was
Right.
your best choice. So, you know, I think in getting to know my students, you sort of learn what they need you to be, who they need you to be, when they need you to be it. So, yeah, just being able to kind of talk with them and understand where they're at tells me, what do I need to do for you right now?
Right, right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, jumping between relationships can be tricky. I
Yeah.
I have I Kung Fu is my foundation, and I studied directly under a very old grandmaster, and this is the type of guy that you know hundreds and hundreds of people would just to see him and take a few moments with him was just this huge privilege. But I was his friend and his student, and it was really weird jumping between
Right.
those really disparate
Right.
relationships. But it was a necessary skill in that position. So,
As a parent, so I have 3 children, and um, I remember when I was younger, my mom always used to say, "I'm your mother, not your best friend."
oh yeah,
And,
yeah,
I would always say, yeah, yeah, great, because I saw my friends and their relationships with their parents, and some of them seemed like they were their child's best friend. And
hmm,
though I thought that I wanted that at the time, looking back, now that my mother is my best friend, I'm really glad she was my mom. And I never was confused in that. And so as a teacher, that's the worst thing that I want to do for a student is for them to be confused about who I am to them.
right,
I want them to understand first and foremost, I'm their teacher and I'm someone who wants to um, help them reach their potential, make them better. But at the same time, I want them to know I care about them. And
uh-huh,
so, whether they see me as a friend, teacher, therapist, I'm not so concerned with how they see me. I want them to understand that it's how I want to treat them. I want them to feel respected and encouraged and cared for. So, I mean, whatever role they see me in, it's not to me as important as how they feel about the work that we do together. And
hmm,
if they feel the right way, if they feel the way that I want them to feel, then I'm happy.
right. I'm glad you explained that. That was a really good
Yeah.
explanation. Thank you.
Yeah.
So earlier you talked about expectations. how important are expectations? How powerful are our expectations?
You know, kids will rise to the level of our expectations or they'll sink to the level of our expectations. And I think when you have clear and high expectations, kids will meet those, but you need to give them a way to get there. So just setting high expectations and being clear on your expectations, that's great, but you also need to meet them where they're at and keep pushing them to that next level. And you know, a lot of teachers do that first few days, just talking about uh, class expectations and norms and getting to know kids and making sure that everybody's on the same page. That is really important.
Right. Okay. So if do you ever set your expectations of a student and you're not really sure if they can meet them, but you're just going to put it in your head that they can?
Yeah, I think sometimes our expectations aren't always as realistic as we think they are, and you have
Hmm.
to go back because you don't quite realize the disparity.
Hmm.
Someone may present, for instance, obviously I teach English. They might be very conversational and verbally. They seem like they have all the right things popping, but then you take a look at their writing and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I missed this. And sometimes what it means is you have to go back and you have to readjust and say, okay, so this might take a little longer for you to get here, but you can still get here.
Hmm.
And I think it's that willingness to go back and think about what do I have to do now to get you to where I want you to be.
Right. Stepping back to basic foundational
Yeah,
skills.
yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes we need to all go back and review. And you don't really know that until you get to know your students.
Right. Right. Well, everything is about mastering the basics, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Um, yeah. I always give the analogy of jazz musicians when I'm teaching kung fu about,
Mhm.
they can do that and they can go all over the place because they've got the scales down,
Right, right.
and they practice the scales every day. So it just goes back to that.
Yeah.
When you present your ideas or to other teachers,
Mhm.
do you, is that scary? How's
Oh
that
my
go?
God, yeah, yeah. I have a conference coming up tomorrow, and I've been preparing for it, and I'm always thinking about relating. How do I want to relate uh, my personal philosophy of teaching to my colleagues? And it's easier for me to do that, funnily enough, for people I don't know than people I know. Um, I think because I've been working in a district for a while, uh, it's easier to talk shop sometimes with people who aren't in my shop
Hmm.
because there there is no preconceived notion of who I am or what I do. I can just kind of speak about what I do and then field questions. And to me, it's less um, unsettling,
Sure.
but I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
I think it's just hard to be a kind of educator who talks about love openly all the time. People don't talk about love around the coffee pot. It's not
Right.
usually in the
Right.
running dialogue. So talking about how important it is to show students how much you care about them, how much you prioritize them, um, that is hard. That's hard to do because we're so focused on standards and on sort of academic jargon when we talk about kids that I think it's hard to talk about social and emotional curriculum. It's
Right.
just not part of what we talk about openly.
Sure. And how is that received? I
I
mean,
think the people who I work closest with are all for it. It's the people who maybe have been here a while
uh-huh.
and who just don't share those same views. They don't really buy in.
They don't.
And no, but I think it's because it makes them a little uncomfortable because it implies that they're not doing something that they should be doing. That, they got this job so they could be a teacher and to talk about what they know, and then go home. And I think saying that it's more than that sometimes makes people feel like they didn't sign on for that. They didn't sign on for relationships and asking kids how they're doing and how they're feeling all the time. And it's a different school of thought. I just don't happen to share that.
It also seems far more difficult. Relationships and that are far more
Yeah.
complicated than facts,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah. Because, you know, anybody can be the sage on the stage. You can get up and you can stand and deliver. And I think, yeah, relationships are more cumbersome, they're more involved. And so there's some pushback with that.
Sure. Yeah. And you have to be more vulnerable, which is probably scary.
Sure. Yeah. I think I have always been nothing but vulnerable. So to me, it's nothing new. It's that I think a lot more vulnerable with my students than I am with like those colleagues who don't share the same opinion. After a certain point, you stop opening up. You sort of, okay, well, I put myself out there and I put myself out there, and now I'm just gonna put myself out there somewhere else, you know, because there's only so much you can really do to change someone's mind on that.
So even with the pushback, you're still moving forward, right?
Yeah, because this works. Because,
right.
like, as you mentioned at the beginning, the sheer number of students that continue to contact me and come in and visit me and email me and message me and meet with me to say thank you.
They want to tell you about their lives.
Yeah, they want to catch up. They want to ask me how I'm doing. They want to tell me that they made it. They want me to know that things were hard, but they're on the other side. And that means so much to me, to realize that I could have helped someone find that version of happiness and success. I mean, that's what we're for.
That's
I
don't know.
That's better than vacation time, right?
I don't know what better you could do than that, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so essentially they're still wanting to please you.
Yeah, and to the point where I'm like, I'm gonna try and pencil you in, but I'm a little busy. But yeah, I mean, it's really great.
Right. Wow. So, you know, schools were kind of built on this industrial era model, and it seems like there's even getting more stringent about like stamping out these perfect, you know, exact
replicas of each other.
Replicas, yeah. What do you think about that?
It's called mass customized learning. It's an oxymoron.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't work. We all, as adults, play to our strengths. We have different gifts, multiple intelligences. And, you know, we can throw around the teacher jargon about differentiating instruction and, you know, adapting, accommodating. But the bottom line is kids are individual, and we can't treat every single child the same. And like I said earlier, we have to maybe modify or adjust some of our expectations, but the way I have found to be most successful with my students is by learning those individual identities and strengths and adjusting my teaching so that it doesn't matter who I have. I can teach AP English, I can teach introductory lit, I can, it isn't about the kind of kid that I'm teaching. It's about how I respond to them. So, I mean, I think there's a reason why industrial age teaching was in the industrial age. It was a long time ago. Things have changed. We've changed. Our culture has changed, and we need to adapt to that.
Mm-hmm. And so you said the word accommodating, and I know that's, you know, big with in IEPs, and it just kind of hit me is that when they're accommodating for that industrial, that exact duplicate, rather than this is a completely different concept of playing to strengths, to playing to the individual and letting their multiple what did you say? They're different
intelligences.
They're different. They're separate and different intelligences, because we all have different. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's the hard part of teaching. And when I began teaching my first, second, third, fourth, fifth year, you're just trying to survive. Let's be real. You think you have the day's lesson plan all set, and you write it down, and you got your plan book, and this is gonna go great. They're gonna love this, and then it falls flat, and you're thinking, oh, okay, so what do I do now?
Mm,
So part of, I think, being an effective teacher is coming in, you got to take the temperature of the room, you got to know who you're working with, and you need to adjust, you need to accommodate. There are teachable moments that you can't plan for. And if you are so focused on what you think you have to teach them, you're going to miss those moments. And so are those kids.
yeah. I know from my own experience, I always go in with a lesson plan.
Yep.
I never teach it.
Right.
Never. Not once have I ever.
Right. Yeah.
From 10 seconds in, it's.
Yeah. Right. And I think because you have to realize, again, sometimes there are things that when you read a student, body language, how they look at you, how they sound, you might have one idea of what they're going to say or what they might be thinking, and then it's something else entirely. So I teach 3 or 4 different sections a day with the same lesson, and every single section that I teach is a little different.
Right.
Because my audience is different, and I've done it a couple times, and I learned things that I didn't know the first time I was going through it. So,
Teach to learn, right?
yeah, it's always going to be a little different.
But it's always an interplay between
Right.
student
It's a
and teacher.
dance.
It's a dance, right? Exactly.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Do you have a smart child who is struggling in school? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Do you feel like the struggle is holding your child back from their true potential? Maybe the anxiety and worry over your child's future just beats you down every day. You don't have to live that way. Learn how to stop a learning disability from becoming a life disability. A child with a learning disability is stressful for the child and the parent. The disability may be eroding their confidence and shattering their self-esteem. Other people may perceive your child as unintelligent and antisocial. If not addressed and fixed early, the child may develop permanent challenges later in life when looking for a good job or meeting a potential spouse. Our current school system does not know how to properly help our children, but at Learning Success, we do. We've created a system you can easily do at home with your child. And with just 15 minutes per day after school with your child, you can save them from a life of struggle and heartbreak. Learn how to unleash your child's potential and embrace their true intelligence. As a special gift for being a loyal podcast listener, we're going to give you a free trial of the Learning Success system. Try it out absolutely free for 15 days. If it is not the perfect fit to help your child succeed in school and in life, just cancel before the trial ends and pay nothing. You even get to keep the free bonuses. Go to www.learningsuccesssystem.com/podcast to get your free trial now. You'll be so happy you did once you see the great grades your child is capable of getting. Imagine being so proud of your child when they bring home a great report card and hand it over with a beaming smile. Get your free trial now at www.learningsuccesssystem.com/podcast. You've got nothing to lose except the stress and anxiety that is holding you and your child down. I'll see you there.
So, why do you think the U.S. is so far behind in education?
Yeah, Finland's knocking it out of the park, I guess. I think there are lots of reasons, and I think part of it is what we were just talking about. We're very caught up with test results and student achievement, that I think student engagement and that interaction between teacher and student suffers because we're very caught up in outcomes. And especially in situations where teachers are evaluated based on students' performance, you know, the stakes are high for us to get them to where they need to be. And I don't think we stop and reflect enough. I don't think we collaborate with our peers enough. And I think too, I was reading this, I think in Tim Walker's book, Teach Like Finland, they focused on not just obviously the achievement, but the joy. They take breaks, you know, they work for 45 minutes and then they have a 15-minute brain break. We don't do that. The way that our schedules are set up, my students have 8 periods a day, 40 minutes back to back to back. It's a very rigorous, monotonous schedule that doesn't really allow for a break. So I think we need to shift our priority. We need to go back and prioritize student joy, student engagement, not just student achievement. And then the rest follows suit. But it starts with prioritizing where they're at, you know, not just what they know.
Right, right. You mentioned brain breaks, and I just recently discovered that brain breaks are a popular thing, or gaining popularity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So 15 years ago, I developed a software program called BreakPal.
Oh, wow.
And it was built for the office, and they were 3-minute brain breaks. We didn't call them that. We just called it BreakPal, and they were based on Qigong moves, which are breathing exercises from Kung Fu, and we did some yoga and different things like that. And it actually, let's see, this was 2008 I put it out in 2006. In 2008, it hit Real Simple magazine.
Oh, yes.
We didn't know it. We were literally, it was a difficult time in our life financially. My wife and I were literally sitting at the table going, how are we going to pay mortgage?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden these orders started coming through.
Wow.
$35 to like 20 a minute were coming through, and we're going, what is this? Where's it coming from?
Wow.
We had hit Real Simple magazine. Anyway, so we redeveloped it and relaunched it in the beginning of 2009. And of course, that was when there was the economic crash. We got into Weight Watchers magazine and some others, and so it was going big. And then the economic crash, and then it just died. But one of the things we did is we went to our school district and said, we'll give this to you for free if you will try it with the kids and do these brain breaks. You know, we didn't call them that.
Yeah.
And it was a great idea, but it just never took off. And so now here a few months ago, I look on there and there's brain breaks. We tried that. They're huge.
Yeah. Well, because it allows you to refocus, recenter.
Oh, yeah.
And it only makes sense. I mean, how many times throughout the day when I'm doing something, I have to get up, I have to stand, I have to move, I have to walk around, I have to stretch. I mean, I watch students do that all the time.
Yeah.
It's a way that you can just disconnect for a moment and then you come back with renewed energy. And yeah, it works, but we don't do it enough because we got to keep it moving.
Right.
And I think that approach really it doesn't work.
Yeah. So I think my timing was off.
Gotta bring it back.
We talk about it all the time. Yeah. Sure. So we've actually started. I did take some of the exercises and started taking them and putting up a little brain break section. I didn't finish the project, but we're thinking about throwing it up there for schools to use and see.
Yeah, well, we need it. We desperately need it.
Yeah, I think we might do that. So Do you, what about kids that are really disadvantaged? I think you
Hmm.
mentioned in the beginning that you had a lot of that. You think
Yeah.
this, is this,
I think when I first began teaching, I didn't realize how disadvantaged because I was young, and I think you assume that that everybody sort of has the either the background or the maybe the privileges that you have. And then I think my second or third year, I realized that a good number of the kids that I was assigning homework to just didn't have homes. And um,
mhm,
I remember thinking, how could this be? You know, they're coming in, they don't have their homework, they haven't read, I didn't assign that much. And then I had a child and realized what a hungry child looked like, what a tired child looked like, what a sick child looked like. And I
mhm,
started understanding that sort of unspoken language when children aren't getting their needs met. Um, you can tell.
mhm,
And the longer I teach, the easier it is for me to uh, see the poverty and the abuse, the substance abuse, the mental health issues that a lot of my kids face. And it can be really disheartening
mhm,
because, uh, you know, someone with a big heart wants to take every child home. And I have in the past. But that
take,
isn't a real, yeah, oh yeah, that
taking
isn't a,
them home.
yeah, my husband and I, when we started teaching, we had three young children, were sort of a safe haven for kids,
Yeah,
who weren't necessarily in the foster system. But you learn after a while that that isn't a realistic, solution.
yeah,
Um, so for me, it's just really important to give back in other ways, whether that's, contributing to like the turkey drive that we have coming up,
mhm,
uh, having fundraisers, bringing um, coats and clothing in, working the programming that already exists in our school, through the social worker that we have, just being an advocate for kids who come from adversity in any way that we can,
right.
because so many of our students really just aren't getting their basic needs met.
Yeah, there really are a lot. We actually did take
Yeah,
one in and raise her. Um, we didn't officially adopt her,
yeah,
but she lived with us and was, we,
yeah.
so the school thought my wife was her mom, even though she was blonde and my wife has dark hair. There's no way she was our biological
Yeah,
daughter.
we had similar experiences. But the thing is that when you love kids, um, you do it
Yeah.
because you see what the alternative can be.
Yes.
And I've never regretted any decision to help a child out who really needed it. And it's, I think, so important that they see school and teachers as safe people and safe places to come to, when they don't have that in their outside lives.
So yeah, you may be their only pillar of
Yeah,
stability that
right.
they
Yeah.
have.
My best friend is a psychotherapist, and she often quotes statistics about if a child has just one stable adult figure in their life by the time they reach 7, they get a good chance, but
Yeah,
they
yeah.
need one. They need one adult that they can rely on.
Right. And even with your limited contact, do you think that
Yeah,
that's
yeah, because chances are I can connect them with someone else, and it can be me until it can be someone else.
right, right, for that
Yeah,
moment in your life?
yeah.
That's yeah, for sure. I've seen so much of that. Um, let's jump down some of your ideas. So
Sure.
nicknames. Tell me about nicknames and why that's important.
That sort of evolved over time, and it came about because I realized that kids responded better to me when I called them by their nickname. And
Uh-huh.
so eventually I started doing this nickname game with them where on the first or second day of class, we'd go around the room. my room is set up in a circle, and I would ask them, who are you, or what would you like to be called? And sometimes they'd have a nickname, sometimes they wouldn't, and then we get to play the fun 20 question game where I would say, okay, well, tell me about yourself. Let's see if we can come up with one. And I think maybe 3 or 4 kids over the past 15 years have declined the use of a nickname.
Yeah.
But everybody else, they love it because it's just a way to show closeness.
Hmm.
And I mean, ultimately, that's what every kid wants, is just to feel special for a second, just to feel like their peers or their teachers have a kind of relationship with them that they could use a nickname. And when I see them in the hall, or when other kids see each other in the hall and they say, uh, what's up, Sagesicle,
Hmm.
it just, their faces light up,
Yeah,
and and it just makes them happy.
it makes perfect sense. I mean,
Yeah,
families do that within themselves, so
right,
it makes
right.
so that's a sign of closeness, right?
Yeah, and celebrities do it, CEOs do it. There are a lot of people in our society that have shortened their names to much success or changed their names.
Right.
And it's just one of the ways I think we just kind of closer identify with people.
Hmm. Right. Interesting. Yeah, my students all know me as Shen Shifu, which is a title, not a nickname, but they still saying it in public is
It's a mouthful. I don't think I could say it.
huh?
I don't think I could say it.
Yeah. Well, if you
Shunshu?
Shen Shifu, yeah, in Mandarin it's even worse. So
Okay, thanks for taking it easy. I can't even say
Shen
it.
Shifu, yeah.
Shunshifu.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it means teacher.
Oh,
It
okay.
means
Well, mine's Mama Mo.
Mama Mo. Okay. Very good. Which also means teacher, right?
Yes, very fitting.
Good. So the foundation of this is being authentic with them.
Yeah.
How do you get there? You know?
Just by sharing, I mean, my subject is English, so I can create sort of prompts that speak to, personal essays or questions about who they are and their identity. But the easier way to do this is just small talk. It's just to the rest of the world, it's conversations. It's before class or during class or after class, having, small one-on-one conversations with kids, asking them, what do you do in your spare time? What do you like? What are you interested in? Getting to know if they're doing something, extracurricular wise, what that is, or showing up to that. You can you can be authentic with them in lots of different ways. The important thing is that when they share something with you, you have to listen. And when I share something with them, I want them to listen. So, um, you know, really paying attention to who they are and being present in the moment. Especially, it's hard when you have, 40-minute classes and everything goes by so quickly, but trying to make the most of those moments that you're together is important to me.
Sounds like one of those simple but not easy
Yes.
things.
Yep. Easy to say, hard to do.
Listening, being present.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are difficult skills.
Yeah, in any relationship.
Yeah.
She says. She says.
Hey, I'm learning.
Yeah, so is my husband, but he's getting better.
Right, right. And I think said you've been married 18 years?
We've been together 21 and
Yeah.
married 18. So you know what? Next decade, he's got it. He's got it.
Hey, we're on 21. I think I'm getting pretty good. So
Yay! Congrats.
I wasn't a fast learner.
No, no, neither was he.
Somebody had just told us.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to understand a woman, but when we say yes, no, 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 it just men are from Mars, women are from Venus,
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
yeah, right, right. So you talk about breaking. I'm going to get off of this subject.
Yeah, please. Switch.
Breaking bread. You said that's
Yeah.
important.
I think there was a saying, well, actually, it goes back to this subject. I'm sorry. The way to a man's heart is through his stomach.
Yeah, yeah.
Same with kids. If you want them to be happy, if you
Uh-huh.
want to show them that you care about them, um, one of the best ways that I've found to do that is to every now and again surprise them with food, because nothing lights up a kid's face faster than a cookie, a cupcake, sometimes a bag of apples if you're desperate. But
Mm,
I always keep crackers or snacks in my room. I have a hot water machine so we can have like tea or cocoa.
mhm.
Lucky enough that that's okay. But
Oh
like I
yeah,
was,
could that be a problem?
well, electrical outlets and plug-ins and things like that in school, sometimes they'd like you to take like the Keurig out of your room.
Mm,
Um, but by and large, I found that kids look forward to those little social rituals because it's one way of showing that you're together in this,
mm,
when you
right.
can sit down and share something with them, whether it's a hot drink or a cold drink or a snack. And so many of our kids are hungry that it actually helps them focus, like the cognitive brain function,
Yeah.
if you're giving them something healthy. Um, but for me, it's just one way of saying I'm with you. We're
Hmm.
all in this together.
Showing it in actions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's showing you care.
Right. Okay. Um, and you mentioned earlier about reading a child, and so can you tell me about learning body language and expression and being able to?
Yeah. So it's just nonverbal cues, and sometimes kids don't really know how to express how they're feeling. They don't really know who to talk to or how to get it out. But um, if you know how they normally talk and act, and if they usually make eye contact and they're not, or if they, usually sound calm and, they come in and they're spouting off. I mean, it doesn't take a psychologist to read when a child is upset, but you have to tune in to their behavior to understand when something isn't within the realm of their normal behavior. And
Yeah.
um, it just means paying attention to things that they may not say, but they show you with their actions. Because I think the tendency is to overlook kids' actions, to just kind of, all right, they seem upset, but let's just keep going. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes they're not in a headspace where you can just keep going.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need to acknowledge that something's wrong and ask what it is, and then see if you can find a way past it.
Right. Are you familiar with the Amy Cuddy TED Talk?
Oh, I don't think I am.
Okay, so Amy Cuddy has done research in posture and how it affects the emotions.
Oh, wow.
And essentially, and this is something I'm very into because we found a huge, our backstory is we ended up with a elementary school principal first enrolling his daughters with us in Kung Fu class.
Okay.
Then seeing what we did, he then sent us every kid with a learning difference from his entire school. So we
Oh,
had classes of 50 or 60 with ADHD,
oh,
dyslexia,
wow.
dyscalculia. So we had this laboratory, and and we had these massive successes with them. And part of
Yeah.
it was building confidence, and part of it is this what you're talking about, the connection. But one part of it was the we're building posture and strong ways of moving. And
Yeah,
so the idea here is that the emotions, of course, affect the posture, but it
right.
goes the other direction as well.
That's so true. Yeah.
So yeah, so just by getting them to move, move in a strong ways and stand up straight, that
Yeah.
we could really affect the emotions. Um,
Yeah. Well, if you look at kinesthetic learning and kinesthetic
yeah,
learners and all
yeah,
of that school of thought, it's the same idea that, it's part of the reason why I ask my students at the beginning of every school year, how do you best learn? Are you hands-on? Are you kinesthetic? Are you visual? Are you verbal? Like, what is it that, turns your dials up so I can find a way in? And yeah, um, I think that's definitely part of it. Uh, we show how we feel and how we move and how we talk. We're more than just,
far more, far more.
yeah,
I think there's a lot more communicated there
yeah, right.
going on. Yeah, interesting. How do you, with so many students, and how do you have time for all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. You don't, and you always you wish there was more, and you always want more. But I think you find little ways to make time. Um,
Mhm.
Part of being a teacher with 100 students on my caseload every year is uh, prioritizing what's most important,
Yeah.
prioritizing what I absolutely have to get done, which children need, which students really need me to focus, sit down with them one-on-one, who can wait a minute, who can't wait a minute, and establishing that line of communication with them so that even when I can't be physically present or available to help them, letting them know when I can be, letting them, whether it's through an email or giving them some way to contact me and let me know, okay, this is what I need help with, Mrs. Morrison. Um, Establishing that line and prioritizing what I can do and who I can help kind of helps me show them how much I value them.
Hmm.
Because if you don't make time for them, if you don't give them a way to communicate with you, then what essentially you're saying to them is, you're not that important. You're important, but you're not that important. So I always want them to see that I'm going to try to find the time in my day to meet with them, talk with them, communicate with them. And some days are better than others, but I'm always going to try.
Right. So it sounds like just the fact that they know that you're trying is maybe a large,
Yeah, I mean,
large part of it.
yeah, I think they understand that there's one of me and 100 of them, but
Mhm.
just doing the best I can, I mean, that goes a long way.
Yeah. And in the moments that you are with them individually or whatever,
Right.
you're listening in your presence,
Right.
even
You
if
know,
it's not long, right?
right. So, we were talking about this earlier, there's physical availability and there's emotional availability. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes all I can offer is a limited physical availability and emotional availability. But I want them to know that I'm trying to be both.
Mhm.
That in the moments that we have together, I want to, make the most of it. And that, again, I think my students understand that pretty soon within meeting me, that
Mhm.
I want to be there for them.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
then they don't leave me alone when they graduate. So it's really working. Like they keep coming back. So it's working.
This is great. That's great.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I'm sure you're going to be this is going to compound, and you're going to be busier and busier, right?
yeah, probably, but it's good. It's
That's
good.
good, huh?
Yeah.
How about collaborating with other teachers on this? And do you do a lot of that?
Yeah, I try to. Our school actually has an amazing setup where Fridays we have about an hour and a half every Friday built into our schedule. Our students are dismissed early, and we have an hour and a half of sort of professional learning community time. And whether we meet in departments or we meet as a staff, we can always count on that time together. And that's been essential to just having the same shared vision, to revisiting our mission statement, to aligning what we do. We need that time together to grow, and I'm so lucky to work in a district that does that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Then what
Yeah.
about so parents? I know that the parents' influence on the child is one of the most strongest influencing factors. Do you
Mm.
work to really collaborate, form relationships with the parents in any way, collaborate with them or
Yeah, I
involve
mean,
them?
that's probably the number one most determining factor in children's success is parental involvement. So
Yes.
whether it's by email, telephone, text, I ask what's the best method to contact them, and then making time to set up positive um, interactions with parents, not just, yeah, I haven't seen any homework for 3 weeks.
Right, right. You only call when it's bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like nobody wants the bad news phone call first. Like, so if you can make an effort to talk to those parents and just let them know what you're doing and who you are, and things that you observe about their child, whether through, interactions or just conversations that you've had. As a parent, I really appreciate it when teachers take the time to reach out to me with those positives first, because you're all in the same team. And I have never had one parent say to me, "Oh, I wish I knew less about my child." They want to know. They love those kids. We're on the same side. So just remembering that when I talk to them, that's important.
Does that usually the situation where parents are going to assume that, or do you have to build that you're on the same team? Or
I think it's kind of case by case, and um, I think a lot of times parents do get the negative call first. They do get the um, uh, so and so isn't doing something, and do you know about this? And I think um, we're used to kind of seeing teachers and parents as on two separate sides of this equation, and so just really developing that rapport, just like I do with their children, is important. And letting them know how they can contact me. It's really simple things like, this is my email. If you need to reach me and you can't reach me here, this is the school number. This is
yeah.
just giving them as many ways as I can think of to get a hold of me. It's
So
important.
probably if you're doing that up front, in the
Yeah,
beginning of
they
the school
know.
year, right?
They know they can talk to me because I'm letting them know how and whatever else they want to know.
So if you contact them, their initial reaction is not what's wrong, right?
Yeah, because they're like, oh, she does contact a fair amount, and I have really good relationships with my students' parents. I had a former student whose mother needed a ride to a state track meet, and he didn't hesitate to ask me because he knew that I knew his mother so well that it would be no problem. Um, and there are a ton of situations like that where students know that I know their family, and that works to our benefit in a lot of ways.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
Very good. So tell us about your book.
So I started writing this book last April, and it really just came from a conversation that I had with a colleague. My mother was going through a health crisis, and I thought, wow, God, how can I teach and take care of my mom? And I had been out a day or two, and students were aware because I don't hold back anything. And I came back in and my entire room was decorated. They had, I think, a balloon arch over the windows. They had a sign, they had pictures up, and, I wept. And I was leaving the building and I bumped into a colleague, and she was having a hard time. She had signed up to chaperone a trip or something, and she didn't understand why more of her students hadn't signed up. And she said something like, "What's your secret? What are you doing?
Mm,
How I stay here, I'm here late, I'm here early, I'm doing all of these things, kids respond to me, but they don't respond to me the same way they respond to you." And
mm,
I thought, well, I don't have a secret. I have no big secret. And I went home and I thought, that's the worst answer I could have ever given that woman. Um, I do have a secret, and it's that I love them.
yeah.
And I think we don't think we can say that. So I started to jot down all the different ways that I show them in, socially and emotionally appropriate ways that I care for them. And they are not revolutionary, but they are things that I think every teacher can do to show kids that we value them. And I think a lot of teachers are hitting it out of the park, but they don't see that disconnect between ourselves and our students um, doesn't need to be there, that we can
Mm.
actually be more effective when that gap isn't there. So that's why I started writing the book, and I've had some success in trying to get it on the market, and I'm just trying to figure out now what's the best way to do that.
Okay. So will we see it soon, or?
I hope so. Yeah. I'm in talks. And I hope that, that it will be soon.
Good. So that'll be posted on your website, I'm sure.
Yes, I will. I will make sure it is. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else we have not covered that's you want to say?
I think this is vital work. I think that so often teaching can be a lonely job because our tendency is to come in and shut the door and, do what we do and go home. So the more we talk about, I think, the role of emotion in education, the more freeing that is. And I just think it's so important to continue this conversation so that other teachers can realize it's okay to care about your kids. It's okay to have relationships. Like, that's what makes it work.
We are humans, right? Not machines.
We are humans.
Yeah. And so people can find you where?
You can find me on my website, emilydenbomorrison.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all the social medias.
Everywhere, ubiquitous.
Yes, so far.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you very much. And we'll put links to all of that in the description so people can find your website and all of your social media and that. But this has been very good, and I wish you a lot of success in what you're doing. And I do agree it is something the world definitely needs.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Best of luck.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Learning Success Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We also hope you have learned something useful, something that you can take back and improve your life with today. If you would like to say thank you, the best way for you to do that is to share this podcast with a friend. Help us help others along this journey. And if you haven't already, please rate and comment on the podcast. Every rating helps us and helps this podcast get out to more people. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you. Thank you again, and make today a great day. No one should have to live with a learning difficulty.